Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network.
For the next hour and 52 minutes, we're joined by David Icke, who is in the United States and California. He had several events with more than 2,000 people showing up to just one of them. And we have the same type thing happen. We have an event, 1,200, 2,000 show up. It is just incredible. And this is only being done through the alternative media. So while we see the stock market plunging 600 plus points today after the bankers got their empowerment immunity takeover bill, understand that at least the good news is thousands to one, according to members of Congress, phone calls against it last week, even after the White House said depression, and then didn't have the plunge protection team prop up the market last Monday when it went down over $1 trillion. Well, the same thing's happened today after the bankers got their power, because this is part of a consolidation. And David Icke's going to talk about that. He's been writing about that for close to 20 years, how the main power of the New World Order in the physical realm is their banking fraud, their fractional reserve system. But I want Ike to first talk, the man who needs no introduction, about the incredibly positive thing, because as the enemy moves against us, as they try to destroy the middle class and slave the people, so they've got to go to the government for their food, so that there can be a financial collapse, riots in the streets, so they can use the military on us, as they're now announcing in mainstream news, to be the saviors, so we accept a militarized banana boat economy. The positive news that this isn't hype when I say it. There is an awakening so huge it dwarfs anything a month ago or anything a year ago. It is exponential. I mean, here's an example. We call up Chuck Norris to come on the show. Never tried. He goes, "Oh, I'm a huge fan. I listen all the time. I want to come on." He comes on, endorses Ron Paul, moves away from the neocons, and says on air he agrees with everything I'm talking about. I mean, again, Bruce Willis goes public and says, "I'm no longer a neocon. I know there's a new world order, a false reality." They're losing all their main icons. On the left is waking up and breaking the paradigm and breaking the controlled tiny box reality and seeing the wider universe around them. So there is a consciousness shift in information, analysis, and it is the 100th monkey. There is a group consciousness. It is spreading, it is happening, it is a mass awareness, and it is beautiful. And so out of this adversity, it's going to get bad. We're going to be tested. Realize that this is evil trying to maintain control. David Icke, after a very successful tour, which thousands and thousands came out to see in California, we welcome you to the airwaves.
Thank you, Alex.
Sir, you've got the floor. Let's break down the shift, what's happening, the positive, and then get into your analysis on the banking global takeover. Then we'll get into the nature of reality itself.
Well, the thing is, Alex, that I've been a kind of barometer of this because I've been doing it for so long. And when I started talking about these things in Britain in the early 1990s, well, crikey, it was just extraordinary, the scale of abuse and ridicule that came my way. But as the years have passed, I've seen this gradually change. And then since 9/11 and another shift after the invasion of Iraq, I've seen it explode. And what we're seeing now is something I talked about a long time ago. When something is covertly manipulating along a road to change society in a certain way, there comes a point where it has to break the surface, where it can be seen, because that which it wants to change starts to happen in front of people's eyes. And this, and what we're talking about today with the finance and everything, is putting in the face of people what they have, and I understand why, what they have tried so hard to deny was reality. And therefore, they're finding it more and more difficult to look the other way and say, no, let's change the subject. And all this together, and there's a consciousness awakening as well, very clearly. People are waking up and expanding their consciousness on a scale never before in a time that I've known anyway. And together, it's bringing people to a state of awareness where they are seeing what is actually happening. Now, we need to go to the next stage now. People are coming out and listening to this information in vast numbers. They're listening to programs like yours in vast numbers. What we need to do now is start to get together, drop the fault lines between left and right and center and progressives and all this other stuff and religion, all the rest of it, and come together and cross the street and start engaging with this system. And by engaging, ironically, I mean disengaging with it, ceasing to allow it to enslave us, ceasing to cooperate with our own enslavement. Because as I talked about last time I was on the show, there are 6 billion people plus now being manipulated. There is at the core a relative handful doing the manipulating. I see a way out of this, but we have to come together, and it's starting, and I'm extremely optimistic because now we're in this window of time where the problem is there blatantly in front of us. The game is more and more blatantly in front of us, and that is engaging and focusing people to the understanding that doing nothing is no longer an option. It's a great time of opportunity, this.
And they only are able to control us by us ourselves, keeping ourselves in that box, in self-regulating to where we're afraid to speak up or afraid to talk to neighbors, and so we just go and watch the television. But again, that is starting to break up. That is starting to shift, and it's so beautiful to see. But before we get into the larger shifts in society and how there's only probably less than 100 global masterminds, a few thousand technicians under them who really get the full structure of the New World Order, there are tens of millions worldwide who have organically reverse engineered what they're doing to a stunning level. We're able to predict what they're going to do. And that's really starting to threaten them, and that's why they're talking about bringing in total dictatorial martial law to try to suppress it. I see that act of desperation as a huge failure. But let's get into the economics first and break down what we're seeing with the banker takeover, how they're proposing a world banking system out of the crisis they created.
Well, and I've heard, I've not been so focused on everything because I've been traveling and moving constantly for about 10 days, 2 weeks. But I have heard the idea that this banking crisis is like bad for the bankers and is not what they wanted. We've got to understand a few things. First of all, the people who are manipulating the banking system do not own just the banks. They own the game. They own the system. Now, if you own football, it doesn't matter if one team beats another team or another team beats the other team because you own the game. You can't lose. So just because Merrill Lynch is absorbed by the Bank of America or this bank goes down and its clientele is taken over by this bank, it doesn't matter because the names on the doors are changing, the masks on the face are changing, but you own the game.
Those are just cutouts.
Exactly. And if you own the game, you can manipulate the game because you're controlling the rules of the game. So what we're looking at, and this has been long predicted, and this is one of the real powerful things, Alex, at this time, is and why it was so important to get this information out about the game and how it's played and what the goals are over the years gone by, because that gives credibility when people look at it and say, hold on a second, this was predicted, this is not just happening now. And this really does start to take power from the way they manipulate, giving us the impression that, oh no, this is just a problem that's just come out of nothing. No, it's been planned for years. And the plan is for a centralization of power in every area of our lives and every area of global society, including politics, business, and all the rest of it. Now, crucial to that is banking. They want a world central bank that dictates to the whole of the global financial system, the whole of the global banking industry, and their families are going to control that. That's the idea. So diversity is the worst nightmare of the dictator. You look at any tyranny. If you want to centralize power, it's no good having lots and lots of points of decision-making and diversity of decision-making because you can't centrally control that. You want to, and just look at the way society's gone through the centuries. It's exactly the same way, centralization of power constantly, because you can only control from the center in the hands of a few if your center holds the power that affects vast numbers of people, eventually everyone, as they plan. So the more and more diversity there is in the banking system, Alex, the less power you're going to have over it, because there are going to be banks and financial systems that you're not going to control to the extent that you want. You want to take them out. You want to centralize power. You want to remove as much as you can the number of names, the number of the amount of diversity.
And that's why the high-level private central banks that are not your regular Main Street banks issued over 1,000 trillion in liquidity to other banks and institutions and changed the rules so they could sell derivatives and get into all this fraud, because now the elite above get to orchestrate the consolidation. They get to send down the regulators. They get to send the tax money to the central small inner sanctum or coterie of banks so that they can manipulate the consolidation. And in the IMF and World Bank documents, in their own statements, in what Kissinger said last week, what was in the Wall Street Journal, Financial Times of London, they all are saying that. The Financial Times of London said, actually, this is good for a few mega banks, and they're the ones that changed the rules. Meanwhile, you have all these people in alternative media running around saying, oh, no, it's an accident. It's an accident. It's key for the establishment, the controllers, to sell that lie so they don't get the blame for what they've orchestrated, so they can play the part of the savior setting up the world banking cartel, which we buy carbon credits from, which are a tax on human breathing, not all the real environmental problems we have, so they can regulate our everyday life with carbon checkpoints and carbon audits of our homes and bureaucracy and one-child policy.